Hey guys, here at osmvdxreviews.com. You're watching our video review of the ePAD 10.1. This is actually a Windows 7 Ultimate tablet, which is a full version of Windows running on here instead of something like an Android or an iOS-based tablet, which are more mobile solutions. And as a result, you're considering something that's essentially the same as a laptop or a netbook in terms of performance quality, and it has, again, that version of Windows built on here, which is a pretty powerful operating system. It allows you to install and do anything you might do on your regular PC, but on the tablet form factor. Granted, a tablet version of Windows is not cheap, and the same thing goes for the ePAD 10.1. It retails for a price of around $500, which is, again, pretty expensive in terms of, just the tablet world, but if you consider the fact that it has a full working version of Windows, it is considerably cheaper and more inexpensive in comparison. Again, by performance standards, the device is definitely in the class and range of netbooks rather than fully functional laptops. It has an Intel Atom processor coming in at 1.66 gigahertz. It also has 2 gigabytes of RAM, 160 gigabyte of hard drive storage, expandable via an SD card slot, and of course hard drives that can be supported and plugged in by a SD or a USB port on the side of the product. Now, the interesting thing about this device is it actually doesn't have a manufacturer backing it up. It's actually something that came out of Shenzhen directly, which we were kind of cynical about at first because it meant the device might have lower quality and it doesn't have a full warranty backing it up, which is a little bit troublesome if you think about it. However, through testing, we found that the device was actually fairly responsive and pretty impressive overall. Design-wise, the ePAD 10.1 is extremely strange and bizarre. When we first picked it up, we actually thought it was very, very stretched. As far as aspect ratio is considered, it's even more stretched than a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is already pretty stretched on some Android tablets. But this takes that even to a larger extreme. Essentially, they took something like the iPhone 3GS and they basically put it to a larger screen. In fact, you can see how there's a huge design cue from this tablet. Even looks like a stretched iPhone, or it looks like what the iPad should have looked like if Apple basically just stretched their phone series in here. And it's down to the exact same details from the chrome edges on the sides on the actual iPhone to the plastic back you might see here. And the same thing is even found on this device, a plastic back. So it's essentially a stretched iPhone. So again, you have this huge screen, but it's kind of like a skateboard in the sense where it's been stretched out to the sides. Now that said, the screen itself is a pretty decent screen as far as resolution is considered, and it's pretty sharp and vibrant and easy to read and see. However, something to be noted is the fact that it has kind of limited viewing angles. Unfortunately, it's not something like an IPS display or an AMOLED or an OLED display where you're going to have no issues with the viewing angle. That's kind of conversely true here, where extended viewing angles are going to make the device kind of black out. So it's kind of similar to the ViewSonic G tablet in the sense where viewing angles are an issue. Taking a closer look at the design of the device, the front of the device is extremely glossy and prone to fingerprints, so unfortunately it will be smudged very easily. The top left-hand side corner of the device houses a 1.3 megapixel front-facing camera for you to use video chatting applications like Skype on this particular product. And down below here we have access to that, not actually a home key, but a special key that brings up a set of menus for you to use on this tablet. It actually brings up a set of special applications, which we'll see in a second here, and allows you to actually access some quick shortcuts to regular applications. For example, there's a hotkey for you to use the device into different modes. There's a standby mode. You can actually adjust the screen brightness. You can access the camera. You can access the headphones, the microphone, the screen, and there's a few other settings on here like screen capture and screenshots. You can take images of what you're viewing on screen. There's a game control for you to play 3D games on here, and just more settings and battery life information and management that it's pretty handy to have as a quick shortcut key from this button. There's nothing on the bottom of the device except for a SIM card slot for you to install a 3G SIM card for you to use to browse the web. You can see here the device also has an accelerometer that's 4 axes, so you can actually tilt the screen for playing games and also for browsing the web, which is pretty easy to use. The right-hand side of the device actually features one USB 2.0 port, a mini HDMI port, a 3.5mm headphone jack. There's also an SD card reader. The mini HDMI port can connect the device to an HD television up to 720p HD resolution to link it to a projector as well. However, we found that when linking to older HD televisions, this function actually did not work, or at least we couldn't get it to work through the settings, so it's not as easy as some plug-and-play solutions we found on prior laptops. There's nothing on the top of the device except for a ventilation hole to vent out the heat, and on the left-hand side of the tablet, we find access to a volume rocker, which looks like it's a volume rocker, but actually it's just for adjusting the screen brightness. So pressing that will actually turn the screen brighter or dimmer, depending on what you're looking for. So right now this is actually going dimmer, this is going brighter. Also, you have access to the charger port, which is a standard one. There's also 2 USB 2.0 ports and the power on and off switch. There's actually, again, nothing on the back. It's a very glossy black back, very prone to fingerprints, but not so prone to scratches, thankfully. There's a ventilation hole for the heat, and you also have a Intel Atom processor logo on the side as well. Overall, as far as hardware is designed, the device does look very classy. It definitely looks very expensive, and even more so than the $500 price tag might suggest from a tablet PC. And we're pretty impressed in that aspect. However, again, the device is a little bit of a copycat in terms of design with the iPhone 3G series, which we're not very pleased with. The copycat side of things. Now, turning the device on, you can see how it's basically essentially Windows, but on a tablet form factor. And Windows 7 is kind of the first. Windows Vista was the first operating system by Windows where we had this tablet, we had this touch functionality enabled natively. However, on Windows 7 devices, again, it's the same problem with Windows Vista where it's not super well executed. And as a result, you find that some of the icons and things are still very small and hard and difficult to press. However, it is, again, better than prior versions of Windows, but not quite as good as anything that Windows 8 might promise. What's interesting about this tablet is it is able to be upgraded to Windows 8. You can do that on your own, and so it's going to work a lot better, but again, out of the box, it's going to come with Windows 7 Ultimate. As far as connectivity options are considered, you have options to GPS for navigation services. You have a Windows Bluetooth 2.1 for wireless options, and there's also, again, the aforementioned 3G as well as Wi-Fi, BG, and N. So it's fully loaded in terms of wireless connectivity options. As far as battery life is considered, it's definitely a short side of this tablet. Coming in at only 2 hours is actually extremely short, and we found that it was about accurate in terms of performance. So you're not going to get any extensive movie watching or web browsing from this tablet, so be sure to have the power adapter ready when you're traveling with it, unfortunately. Otherwise, again, the device is basically, again, a Windows version of a tablet that performs fairly respectively. It's, again, the same performance you might get from a similarly spec'd Windows netbook-based device. And taking a look at the web browser first, we'll see that. Now, even though the device does support multi-touch support, for some reason, some applications are not allowing that functionality to be fully utilized, which is a shame. However, you do have kinetic scrolling, so it's pretty good and easy to use. Now, unfortunately, another downside of Windows 7 is, of course, the huge keyboard, which is difficult to use. Again, the virtual keyboard basically pops up and allows you to not see anything what's happening on screen. It obliterates everything in view, and it's difficult to kind of adjust and type via this keyboard. Even though the keyboard is responsive, the screen is very responsive and easy to type on. Again, it's very difficult to see what you're actually doing, which is a downside. Handwriting recognition is thankfully better. It's actually pretty accurate and easy to use. But again, there isn't a stylus to help you with this. But again, it is pretty responsive, so thankfully, it does work pretty well, and I think it's a little bit better than the actual keyboard, which is a little bit ironic. You can install some third-party keyboards, which allows you to type in a better experience in a better fashion as well. As far as performance is considered, you can watch YouTube videos. Some basic gaming might be fine as well, but not anything too heavy. Again, anything you can do on a netbook will probably be fine on this device. Again, viewing angles are kind of limited in this sense. As far as heating is considered, there's not too many problems in terms of overheating. The fan is on the left-hand side of the device, so it gets a little bit heated when you're holding it for a period of 30 minutes or longer, but it's not too bad, and we've definitely seen worse, so you can get used to it over time, we think. So as far as, again, browsing through videos, clicking on one, you can see the speed of the browser is pretty quick. Again, it's far faster, I think, than a lot of other Android-based devices out there because it does have that full version of Windows. It does have an Intel Atom processor, which on paper is going to be faster than something of a mobile processor like Snapdragon. So you can see how content plays pretty well. And you can even go to the full screen view, which adds a very stretched view, so you can see how widescreen performance does work extremely well. I'm just going to pause it right now, but you can see how the video experience overall is pretty impressive, and we were definitely enjoyed that experience overall as far as watching video content. Now, of course, this tablet does not have a DVD or CD-ROM drive, so in order to access a external CD drive, you have to plug it via the USB port, but you can still watch movies on the go. There is a Windows Media Player built on here, as you might expect. So web browsing overall is a pretty respectful aspect, but for some reason the Chrome browser doesn't support the multi-touch functionality that we kind of expected it would support. So not everything is plug and play ready to go, unfortunately. So I'm just going to take a look at some of the actual sample images to show you how that the multi-touch does work, but again, it's kind of limited to some specific applications. One application where multi-touch does work is the native Windows photo browser. So you can actually pinch and zoom, and it's actually very responsive, very lucid from a Windows tablet perspective. You can also go back and forth between different images and slide back and forth as well. So all the gestures does work, and they do work very well. And again, another aspect where this tablet excels at is actually playing back slideshows and anything that really shows off the screen, which is again very bright, very crisp, and very high in terms of pixel density, just not very good in terms of viewing angles that we talked about there. So we can, I believe, to tap and go out, if I can figure out, maybe bring up the keyboard. No, to actually go out of this. Out of the menu interface, we would have to again hold a long press via the anywhere on the screen, which actually brings up the right click icon, and that will allow you to exit the slideshow when you're done. Now, one aspect we did have some issues with as far as the specific tablet is the fact that since the screen is so stretched, sometimes applications and programs, we couldn't see the bottom of the OK click or the some of the keys on the bottom of the screen because it's not as optimized for something that's so stretched. And as a result, we had to kind of switch back and forth between different orientations just to click on various buttons in different programs that weren't as designed to fit on this particular screen. And that's a little bit not as easy to use, and that's a little bit of a downside and disappointment. As far as the speaker is considered, it is a stereo speaker that's built onto this product. However, the speaker experience is kind of tinny, very soft, and so when you're watching YouTube videos, it's definitely limited. It's very quiet. We would really recommend you to plug in a pair of 3.5mm headphones into the side of the device to get more out of the music experience, but it does work. And something that's interesting is that as far as speakers are considered, you actually do have you have a speaker manager built on here. It's also called the sound manager, and it allows you to actually adjust to different settings. For example, the main volume, the stereo surrounding, allows you to go through analog settings for you to actually go back and forth between different front and left virtual surround sound. There's also some sound effects on here, like if you're in an auditorium or you're in an opera house or you're in the shower. So for echo effects, it's going to play back as well. Also for the microphone is also there. So a lot of different settings for you to go through and navigate. So it's kind of interesting that's built onto this tablet as well out of the box. Otherwise, a very clean install of Windows Ultimate. Windows Ultimate is a pretty powerful version of Windows, but nothing too much going on here. There's not even a Word. It does support Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, of course, but again, there isn't going to be that installed, preloaded, so we just installed the version of OpenOffice here. Otherwise, you do have a few basic games built on here, a few basic accessories, and everything works pretty well. Another program where multi-touch does work is the Paint application. Again, you can use 2 fingers to paint instead of just one. That shows off the fact that the multi-touch does work, and it works pretty well, as you can see here. Now, the Pad 10.1 actually doesn't come with a keyboard dock out of the box, so unfortunately you have to purchase your own, but those are pretty inexpensive, coming in at around $20-$30, and you can basically find one that dubs as both a case as well as a QWERTY keyboard for you to type on, like on a netbook. And otherwise, again, the screen is pretty responsive. It's easy to use. Some other applications that are preloaded in here, accessories include Paint. There's a snipping tool, the voice recorder. There is WordPad built on the device for reading Word documents. Some basic games that we talked about, and that's basically it as far as preloaded applications are considered. Bluetooth does work. It works great for listening to music, again, because the stereo speakers built onto this device aren't very powerful. So overall, the Pad 10.1 is definitely a pretty impressive tablet. We were kind of surprised by the performance of it because it was never really in an area where it stuttered or slowed down, which we kind of expected from something with just an Intel Atom processor. However, you do get a netbook-like experience on here with a very nice touchscreen display, a very interesting aspect ratio, which is stretched, so it's perfect for watching videos on the go. Maybe not so much for Word, for any Word editing documents or some games on here because it's so stretched. But otherwise, another disappointing factor is the fact that battery life is so short. But despite those flaws, we do think it has a pretty good design, it has a pretty good aesthetic appeal to it, and if $500 seems like a good price tag for you, then I say that this is a pretty good Windows 7 Ultimate based tablet PC, the Pad 10.1. So thanks for watching here, osmvtxreviews.com. This has been our video review of the Pad 10.1 PC. As far as power on and off goes, it's also pretty quick, and a quick boot or turning it on and turning off takes around 20-30 seconds, and it fully loads, which is again pretty responsive, pretty impressive. And also the fact it has a 160 gigabyte hard drive is also a pretty large capacity for tablet PCs. Now, thanks for watching here at osvtxreviews.com. Again, this has been the Tab 10.1.